Alrighty. Hello and welcome. My name is Andrew Greenland and I am a research officer in the Parliamentary Research Service. Today we'll be talking about housing supply in New South Wales electorates. But first, I'd like to provide an acknowledgement of country. We work on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands upon which we are all located, and pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that acknowledgement to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present here today. The Parliamentary Research Service provides confidential research services for all members and publishes research papers for the Parliament. This includes publishing data for New South Wales electorates on topics such as housing. Other recently published data available for New South Wales electorates includes unemployment and job seeker estimates, public and private school numbers, and NAPLAN results. I'll show you where you can find all of this data later in the briefing. So today I'll provide a brief overview of the building approval dataset that was used to produce this data brief, primarily what it is measuring and how to interpret it. I'll then demonstrate how to navigate the data brief, but please feel free to add any questions you might to the chat, and I'll answer them when we get to the Q&A at the end. Or you can also hold your questions, and I can answer them live. So, ideally, to understand how the supply of housing has changed over time, we would collect data on the number of houses that are present in an area. Unfortunately, the only measurement of this available for small areas, such as electoral districts, is from the census, which at every 5 years does not provide a up-to-date indication of how housing supply is adjusting to policy changes, population changes, and differing economic conditions. The most frequently released indicator of changes in the housing supply, which is available, are building approvals. So ABS building approvals are a collection of data from administrative sources, i.e. councils and other approval bodies, on residential and non-residential building work. This may include construction of new buildings, alterations and additions, non-structural renovation and refurbishment, installation of building fixtures, and full demolitions. The ABS considers a building to be a rigid, fixed, and permanent structure which has a roof, and its intended purpose is to house people, plant, machinery, vehicles, goods, or livestock. So for our purposes of understanding building supply, we consider a narrow selection of building approvals. Specifically, the data brief includes approvals that are for new residential buildings, so not renovations or additions, and that they are privately owned. That is, that the intended final owner of the building is the private sector, even if it was partially funded by a public entity. Building approvals are shown as the number of dwellings approved, with a dwelling being a house, individual apartment, or semi-detached dwelling, such as townhouses and villas. So while a block of apartments may be a single building, it is multiple dwellings and is recorded as such. Anytime you see building approvals throughout the data brief or presentation, it is referring to the number of dwelling units approved. To assist in understanding how building approvals impact the supply of housing, the data brief also includes graphs which show the average number of months between approval occurring and construction commencing, the average number of months between construction commencing and the building being completed, the number of dwellings that have been approved but not yet commenced, and the number of buildings completed each quarter across New South Wales. This data is compiled by the ABS from their quarterly building activity survey and helps to indicate on average how long it can be expected for an approved dwelling to become something someone can actually live in. Like building approvals, the value of buildings approved is collected from administrative documents submitted to approval bodies. These values should exclude the value of land demolition and landscaping, but include other site preparation costs. For houses, this is generally the case, and these values represent a reliable indicator of completed building costs. However, for other dwelling types, they can differ significantly from the actual completed value of the building, as final costs and contracts have often not been established before approval documents are submitted for larger building projects, like a large building estate or multiple apartment buildings. Where a building is intended to be used for multiple purposes, for example, apartments on top of a retail space, the ABS endeavours to split the value accordingly, but where that is not possible, the value will be assigned to the building's predominant purpose, which may lead to multi-purpose apartment developments being overvalued. Throughout the data brief, the value of approvals is presented as the average value per dwelling approved. This is calculated by totaling the value of dwellings approved for the period and area of interest and dividing it by the number of dwellings approved for that period and area. This allows approval values to be compared between electorates and across time, but does mean that for areas with lower zero approvals in some periods, especially apartments and semi-detached dwellings, the average value may not be completely representative and can be easily skewed or influenced by the issues mentioned. The building value data has predominantly been included to assist in understanding how the costs of building have changed over time in each electorate and to provide context for the kind of buildings being constructed. Now I'll show you how to find this data brief on all of our other electorate data. Right, so you should now see the Parliament website. Yeah, so from the Parliament website, if you click on Research Papers, which is over here, you'll be taken to a spot where you can find all of our published research. For electorate data, you go to electorates, where you will find the various items grouped by topic. In the case of this one, it is under housing, and it is housing supply here. So the data brief is designed to enable you to do two main things. Get a snapshot of data for a particular electorate, and compare data across electorates. The data brief has multiple tools for exploring the data that I'll take you through. So the first tool is the dashboard here. So broadly, this shows the data over the most recent financial year, so 24 to 25, specifically July 2024 to June 2025, and the monthly data since 2016 for an individual electorate. The data brief opens with the average values for New South Wales as a whole to show an overview of the trends across the state, where, for example, we can see the average number of buildings approved across New South Wales electorates was 511, which is there, and the average value per dwelling was around 595,000. The dashboard also shows these values for each of the dwelling categories, so apartments, houses, and semi-detached, in the bar graphs below. Below that, it shows the monthly approvals by dwelling category. We have that below here. And a smooth monthly average value per dwelling, which for New South Wales indicates that the average value per dwelling has increased from around 324,000 in July 2016 to around 595,000 as of June 2025. This is likely from increases in inflation in construction costs and demand pressures in the construction and materials sector, but it may also indicate that the size or quality of dwellings being constructed has increased. So either they're using more insulated, they're more expensive to build, or they're just larger. Notably though, overall, the average number of approvals has been fairly steady over the past 3 years. You can see that it hasn't really ticked upwards or downwards since sort of 2022. So you can also search for your electorate using the filter or scroll through the drop-down menu if you so wish. Say, for example, the Northern Tablelands. Where we can see that while for New South Wales, the average number of approvals has been relatively flat, for the Northern Tablelands, there's been an uptick in the more recent years and a shift towards more dense housing in the form of increase in semi-detached dwellings. As you can see, since around mid-2022, there's been quite a large amount of semi-detached dwellings approved there, whereas previously they were more rare. Another example we can look at is Hawkesbury. Again, we can just search for that. Where we can see it had the largest number of approvals for dwellings categorized as housings with 1,251. And that was across the state. So the second tool we have available to us is the building activity graphs. So these show the data over time for New South Wales as a whole. And the items these are available are time to commencement, where it opens from approval. And then we have time to completion from commencement. Dwellings not yet commenced. And the dwellings completed. And this is by quarter across all of New South Wales. So for example, based on the most recent data available, which is the period between July 2023 and June 2024 for this data set, by combining time to commencement and time to completion, which is the first two graphs, these two, we could estimate that in New South Wales it would take on average 12.8 months from approval to completion for a house, 14.7 months for a townhouse or other semi-detached dwelling, and 39.6 months, or just under 3.5 years for an apartment. The large disparity in apartments in part comes from the large increases in both time to commencement and time to completion for this category, which you can see on the graph. Whereas this has not happened for townhouses and houses. So these graphs are included, as mentioned, just to assist in understanding what building approval means for your electorate. Basically, you get into building approval, how long until that's actually something someone can live in. So the third tool available in the data brief are the interactive maps. These are here to assist in comparing electorates and identifying regional trends. On the map, you can select total residential approvals, house approvals, apartments approved, and semi-detached dwellings approved. The map shows the number of approvals for the selected category, how the electorate ranks on the approval numbers for that category, the value per dwelling, the regional average number of approvals, as we've grouped the electorates into 12 regions to assist in comparing electorates to similar peers, And you can also see the New South Wales average number of approvals. For example, in semi-detached dwellings, we can see that Dubbo, which is here, had 363 approvals, which puts them at rank 4 in the state and was above the regional average of 130 and the New South Wales average of 113. If we switch to apartments and we zoom into the Greater Sydney area, we can see Castle Hill, which had the largest number of apartments approved in the state at 1,780. You can see that is substantially above the Sydney regional average of 402 and the New South Wales average of 165 there. So the fourth tool available in the data brief is the interactive tables. Like the maps, there is the you can select which category would you like between total approvals, houses, apartments, and semi-detached. Each column is sortable by clicking on the headings, so you can sort by annual change, for instance, approvals, or value per dwelling if you wanted. And you can use the search box to filter the table, much like the dashboard. So for example, if we look at my electorate of Parramatta, we can see that Parramatta had 1,410 buildings approved during 24 to 25, which was an increase of 113 from 2023 to, or 2022 to 23. 2023 to 24, that one, yep. We can also see how it compares to other electorates in the Blacktown Parramatta region. So as we've searched for Parramatta, it is filtering by that name, which includes the region. And we can see that it's above the regional average of 707. The annual change column is there to help identify the impact of any policy changes over the last 12 months and to provide an idea of how close the number of approvals in the electorate were to their usual value. For example, if we clear this filter and we switch to apartments, and then if we search by approvals from highest to lowest, we can see as Castle Hill, which we saw on the map, had the highest number of apartments approved at 1,780. And we can see that that is an increase of 1,496 from the previous year, which would indicate that that is perhaps not a number that is close to the average for that electorate, and that is perhaps something has occurred there recently, like one singular large approval, or perhaps policy change has changed some zoning in that region. There's also pinned to the top the New South Wales average number of approvals, as well as annual change and a value per dwelling to assist in seeing how your electorate compares to the New South Wales average. Finally, you can also download at the bottom a spreadsheet of the data included in this data brief. So that includes the number of buildings approved by dwelling category, the average value per dwelling category, and this is monthly by electorate and by the regions. So if anyone has any further questions, feel free to turn on your mic or pop it in the chat. If there are no questions, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. It'd be great if you could fill in the feedback survey if you have a spare moment. And please feel free to get in touch if you have any queries about this data brief or any other data for our electorates or any other research questions you may have. Thank you for joining us.